Okay, so record started. Mini prelim paper 1, it was a non-calculator paper, okay? So total 30 marks. That was your first paper. Didn't have to write your name on this one. But next week here, no, yeah, you don't need to write your name. So you had your formula list on that paper. Actually, the formula list that you needed to use between paper 1 and paper 2, these are the different formulae that you needed to use. So we needed to use this one. You didn't have a question with sine rule, no cosine rule. There was no area of triangle, but you had a volume of a hemisphere, so you needed that formula. A volume of a cone as well, you needed that formula. So you needed three formulae from these. So let's go on the first question. So the first question we had was to factorize x squared minus 2x minus 8. Can you tell me if you can see it okay?
Yeah, it's a bit fade, but I think that's just the way it's been scanned, maybe.
Yeah, it's this. I've tried to scan it so that I can get, yeah. So basically, whenever you see factorizing, remember we've tried to use MAM, meaning here I've got a silent 1 again. So it's a bit like you've got 1x squared minus 2x minus 8. So I'm looking for two numbers. If I time the two numbers, I get negative 8, 1 times negative 8. And when I add the two numbers, I get negative 2. So straight away, I know to get 8, I need 4 times 2. But to get negative 2, I need I need the biggest of the two numbers to be negative in order to get negative 2 here. So that's pushed me to negative 4 and plus 2. So negative 2, plus 2
negative 4
and negative 4 were your two numbers, and you just write them x here plus 2 and then x minus 4. So 1 mark for this. So whenever you're going to see a dot, it's just a mark and 1 mark for that. So if you gave me negative 4, you would get 1. If you gave me plus 2 on its own, you would get 1. And then both written, you get your 2 marks. I think most of the student got that one okay. The next one was same as what we did in the starter. You needed to find x1, y1, x2, y2 to give the gradient. And the answer, most of you as well got this. If y2 was 8 and y1 was 6, which is what most of the people did, you had 8 minus 6, and then negative 3 minus 4, which is negative 7. Okay, so I gave everyone the mark when they wrote it as 2 divided by negative 7. I've seen some old paper where this mark was only given when you had written it as it's a negative fraction number. I know it gives you the same value, but get into the habit, whenever you're going to write a fraction, put the negative sign. You can do all your work before, but when you finish, if it ends up with a negative, whether it's negative at the top or negative at the bottom, get into that good habit of finishing it off by writing negative in front of the fraction 2/7, just in case you get a very
annoyed marker.
Yeah, a marker that is very pedantic, and he might not give you, especially if this is, yeah, he might not give you the full mark. But yeah, or some people put the minus in front of the 2. So, but I gave you the mark, no matter what it was. But like I said, if that day I'm not your marker, at least if you didn't know before, now you know, okay? And I've put a wee note, I think, on everyone just so that you know that. This third question, changing the subject, I noticed a few had a bit of problems. I think it's to do with the square root here. So what we had to do here to get the first mark was to get rid of the square root, and the inverse of a square root is to square the numbers. So you would need to square r square. And what we said was, in order to get rid of a square root, you just time it by the same square root, and that gives you a. Remember, you had one like this where you had to make the denominator not a third, for example. That's why you were using square root of 5 times square root of 5. So it's the same thing. You need to do r times r and square root of v of h times square root of v of h. Basically, this is how you get rid of a square root times square root of v of h. Okay, and that gives you this r square equal v over h. So then the second stage was, because you want h to be the subject, you want h basically to be on the left side. I am dividing by h here. So what do I need to do is, to get rid of this h here, I need to time by h both sides. Because if I do h divided by h, that becomes 1. And on the other side, I get my r squared times h, or you can just write it as r squared h. So that would be the second stage, and that would give you another mark. Or some people just went straight to the answer, so they still got the third mark by saying that I can swap h and r square, and that's the same thing. Because after that, we need to divide by r square both sides, divided by r square, and your final answer is h equal v over r square. Okay, so that's where you would get your 3 marks. So the next question we had was find the value of 3. So this one was causing a bit of problem as well, I've noticed. So basically you had 3 times 27 to the power third times 9 to the power negative 1 over 2. So basically you had to evaluate first this number, because you know what 3 is, and to evaluate that number. So 27 to the power third is just cube root of 27. So that's something that you need to know. 27 to the power third is just cube root of 27. What is the number that you need to time by itself and time by itself again, like 3 times to get 27? 3. So because 3 times 3 times 3, and that would be your first mark. So just giving me that would have given you first mark. The next one that a lot of people struggle a wee bit with is whenever you're going to have a negative index. So we did say that a to the power minus m, for example, is the same as 1 over a to the power m. So that is a rule in your indices. So 9 to the power negative a half is the same as 1 divided by 9 to the power half. And the same to the power of a third, it's a cube root. To the power of a 9 to the power of a half is just a square root. Remember we said the square root, we don't put the 2 there, because mathematicians being the way they are, if they can do without marking something, they wouldn't put it. So root 9 is 3, you end up with 1 over 3. That would be your second mark. And for your third mark, you just replace now, substitute 27 to the power third there. So you get 3 times 3 times a third. 3 times So 3/3 is a whole, so you can just say, okay, this simplifies, and then 3 times 1 is just 3, and that would be your third mark. Okay, so you'd be surprised how many struggle with this. And we were okay when we went into Unit 1 when we did indices. So that means you need to revise a wee bit of some of your rules. Okay, 2 rules here, the fraction one and 1/, and change the sign. Okay. So this one, I think most got that one okay. Rational denominator, you just time by √5, both top and bottom, and you end up with 3√5/5. Yeah, so it was 2 marks. You would get 2 marks if you just go straight from there to here, or if you write the work in the step there. For the next one, we had to simplify √150. So what I usually tell folks is, whenever you're going to see thirds that needs to be simplified, the telltale that your answer is already here, telling you what you need to do. So if you can't see that 150 is a multiple of 6, just go on the side of your paper and just do 150 divided by 6 and see what you get. How many 6 can you fit into 15? So you've got 0, 2, remainder 3. How many 6 can you fit into 35? Okay, so even if you didn't realize that you had a square number of 25 there times 6, just divide 150 by 6, because this is giving you what it should be. Sometimes you get √150 plus root another root, a big root, and at the end plus 2√2. Then you know that it's going to be simplified using 2√2, because √6 is a third. You're not going to be able to simplify √6. Okay, so that is the wee hint that you should be using. So √25 is 5. 5√6 minus 3√6 is just 2√6. So 2 marks for that as well. So question 5 was 4 marks. Next question. Yeah, so a lot of you struggle with this one. I think it's just to do with the practice of quad and the fact that we've only looked at quadratics not too long ago. But it's practice. So you've got this in a completed square form. So what we said, okay, 2 things. Whenever you're going to get a quadratic is going to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. If you were to expand it, for example, if a is positive, then you've got a smiley, you get a smiley face. Okay. So that means you're going to have a minimum turning point. Whenever a is positive, you're going to have a minimum turning point. So just saying minimum turning point would have given you 1 mark. Just mentioning that. So now how do I know that a is positive? Because you've got x plus 1 square. So even you could have done that x plus 1 square. So it's just x plus 1 times x plus 1 minus 1. So that would be x squared plus x, that's plus 2x, plus 1 minus 1. So 1 minus 1 is just 0. So I've got here something with a equal 1, b equal 2, and c equals 0, basically. So I know I've got a minimum turning point. So if anything, if this is 3 marks, I should be getting this mark. Okay, now the turning point coordinates, remember, we said we've got a smiley face. The turning points coordinate happen when my first part here is 0. To get to the minimum here, this would need to be 0. Because I've got a square, this number here is always going to be positive. Okay, so when is x plus 1 equals 0? So x plus 1
When x equal to 0.
equals 0. We take away 1, we take away 1. Those two goes. 0 minus 1 is just -1, when x equals -1. So you'd be surprised how many people struggle with this one. Or what I used to say is if you've got x plus p square minus q, the first one is always minus this number here. But because I don't like people remembering things, it's better to understand what you do. Okay? So turning point is -1 and -1. So I've got my minimum turning point, -1, -1. And because we've been asked to state the coordinates, you need to write them with the brackets. Now, the next question was find the coordinate of where the graph crosses the y-axis again. So that's what we call y-intercept. That happened when x equals 0. So quite a few got that okay. So you just substitute x with 0. So 0 plus 1 square becomes just 1. Take away 1 becomes 0. So find the coordinates again, find the coordinates. People that just wrote 0, x equals 0, and left it y equals 0 there wouldn't get. But if you do, it's the origin point, you would still get the mark. Now, how do we sketch this? I've got my minimum turning point, -1, -1, and I've got the y-intercept. So you can just sketch it with those two. That would give you 2 marks. Or the other thing you could have done if you want it to be, so basically because you've got an axis of symmetry at the turning point, then you know that this point here is symmetrical to the other point opposite there. So that wouldn't give you an extra mark, but it's just when you draw it, then you just go down. As long as you go through the origin and your turning point, you get both marks. Okay, so when someone had given me another turning point, like, I don't know, if someone had said my turning point was 1, -1, for example, and still draw properly with 1, -1 and 0, 0, then that person still got the 2 marks for the graph. Okay. So the next question, yeah, quite a few struggle with that one. We did quite a few trig graphs. So you need to revise the trig graph basically. So what I say here is to find the amplitude 2 ways. Either you can see that A, you go from the top to the bottom. So 3 plus 1, that's 4. And you half it because your amplitude is taken from the half point right up to the top. So you can say, okay, I've got 3 minus -1 over 2, which is 4 over 2, which is 2. So you can write it like that. Or you can just say, from what I can see here, the amplitude is from the midpoint of my wave right up to the top, and that is 1. 2 steps, you can just write amplitude equal 2 that way. B, how many of these would I get within 360? You could have asked that question. Because it's 120, you can fit 3 of these within 360, or you can just say 360 divided by 120. That would be B equal 3. And the last mark was because the graph itself, this should have been 0 if we were not adding any offset. It's as if the graph went up by 1. So it went from 0 to here. So that is a +1. So you can just say that C is just 1 as an offset here. And that would be the third mark. Quite a few got 2 out of 3. Not many got the first one. I think the first one was the hardest one to get the amplitude. But try to think about what it would look like if it hadn't been shifted up. Then you would see. Okay. So that was question 7. Question 8. Oh yeah, so this was fraction. So we had 7 over k minus 5 divided by k minus 3. So what we said we were going to do when we're going to have fractions, so every time you've got a over b minus c over d, we just say we're going to use cross and smile. So you do a times d minus c times b divided by the common denominator bd. So that's all you needed to do basically for this. That means you get 7 times k minus 3 minus 5 times k divided by k times k minus 3. So you didn't need to expand k square minus 3k. You don't have to. You didn't lose the mark either. But then you need to expand this one because it says to give it in its simplest form. So 7 times k, 7k. Then 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. And this time, this is where you need to group the likes. So you've got 7k, take away 5k, which is 2k, minus 21. At the bottom, you don't need to expand it. Remember, the more work you do, the more work that can cause you to make a mistake, then the less mark you will get. So if you don't have to, I would just save that energy for something else. So 3 marks for this one. Cross and smile. Okay. And the last one, I would say out of all the questions, that was probably the hardest. Because there's a couple of things here. So if you read the question, first thing first, you need to highlight what you've been asked. Calculate the perimeter of this logo. The perimeter is the contour so I'm going from that point to that point, but then you need to finish it off here to here and then finish off there. So I've got 9. I've got 9 because these are the radius. And I need to find this value. So how do I find a sector length? So what we said is we do the angle itself. So this is 240 divided by 360. So that's what we used to say, theta divided by 360 time the perimeter of a circle, because we're looking at perimeter, pi d. So we've been asked to use pi equals 3.14. So you put 3.14, and d is just 2 times 9, which is 18. So that would be the outside, and then you add to this 2 times 9. Okay? Plus 9 if you want. So this is the bit that you needed to calculate, because adding 18 is quite straightforward. So how do I do this? I'm going to make it much easier for me. So first thing first, 240 divided by 360. You can divide top and bottom by 10. Then you end up with 24 divided by 36. You have 2 times 9, which is 18, and you got 36. 18 divided by 36 is just a half. So by getting rid of 18 and 36, you just end up with 2 here. So it's easier to divide 24 by 2 than it is to multiply 24 by 36, because 24 divided by 2 is just 12. Now the only thing I've got left to do is 12 times 3.14. Decimals. So some people don't like decimals. So what you could do if you don't like decimals, what is 12? 12 is 10 plus 2. So you can just say, I've got 3.14 times 10 plus 2. What did you learn in math? It's that times that plus that times that. I'm good at timing by 10. I'm good at timing by 2. I don't need to do all this work where I could probably make a mistake. So what is 10 times 3.14? 31.4. Because you've done it quite a lot. You just move the decimal point or you shift it left, some teacher would say. And what is double 3.14? 6.28. Yeah? And now that is easier to do because I've got 31 plus 6, which is 37. 0.4, add on 0.2, 0.6, and then the 8 there. So without having to do any real calculations, I managed to get the first part, 38.68. You add 18. It's a bit like adding 20 and taking away 2 from here. And I end up with 55.68. And that was your 3 marks. Okay. And that was how you would get 100%. I think that was the end of that paper, yeah. Any question on that paper? You can type your question or you can unmute yourself and
Sorry, did you see the question 9? That was obviously identifying that as an area of a sector, because I think I went in a world. I did area of a
yeah. So you
like an arc. I think I did that wrong.
Yeah, maybe. But what you had to do is read the question. Right. What your head went with is this, because you think, oh, they've shaded that. That's probably what they're asking me. But just because they've shaded it doesn't mean that's the question they're asking. Maybe if whoever had put this problem and just had put something like this without shading it, you might have not made the mistake. Maybe, I don't know. It's just how your brain read this question. So never assume, basically, whenever you're going to get a problem, especially if it's a problem solving, read and just highlight. I know you guys are not doing it on a paper or somewhere, but what I usually tend to tell my student is highlight the important things here. I've got an angle, I've got a radius. Oh, they've asked me to find a perimeter. Okay. So it's a common mistake.
81.
It's a common mistake. But you could still get 2 out of 3 if you had put the formula here and you made a mistake, so you would lose the mark here. But if your calculation was still okay based on what you had put and you still gave me a value, you could still get 2 out of 3. So just telling me that I used the wrong formula didn't penalize you as much as it would have 25 years ago, because someone would just go, oh, it didn't use it, 0. Whereas you could still get 2 out of 3, which is still a pass on that question, okay? So that's why I keep saying to people, you know, math is not as hard as it used to be. In the old days, it was a pass or fail, pass or fail. Nowadays, no, if you start with something wrong and all your working is based on what you started wrong, but then you still get marks. So whoever's going to mark you, you would see they give you the mark on a wrong statement. They give you the mark because you started with the wrong. So you see a tick with a wee bar on it. You still get a tick. Okay? So that's how it works. That's how you get the pass. Okay, and don't give up. You started with area, just keep going with what you had in your head and keep doing the work, because 66% of the mark is better than no marks at all, right?
Yeah, true, absolutely.
So paper 2, you were allowed the calculator. So I was surprised seeing some people still doing calculation with paper 2. Your best friend here is going to be your calculator, and you are working against the time. So the questions have been picked so that you're against the time. So if you can use your calculator, then I would say use it. Okay. So this one was simplifying. So how do we simplify? First thing first, I can see difference of 2 squares. I need to factorize, because factorizing will get you the simplification. It didn't tell you they are factorized then simplify, but they expect you to see a difference of 2 squares and use MAM if you want to use MAM there to see that here you've got 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So I'm looking for 2 numbers. When I time them together, I get 1. So there's only 2 numbers that you can time together to give you 1. It's going to be a 1 and a 1. But now, what is the sign? Because you've got to add them to get negative 2, that's when they get negative 1 times negative 1. That is still plus 1. So you've got your x minus 1 times x minus 1 divided by, again, 1 is just 1 square, it's the same thing. X plus 1 times x minus 1. And you end up with just simplifying both sides. And that's how you get your third mark, x minus 1 divided by x plus 1. Okay. So what was the difficulty here? Oh, someone for some reason started well and just decided to flip this. It happens. It happened, guys. So how can you avoid this? I've seen this one, guys. Common mistake. Someone flips it because I think, and then they go, oh, that's x plus 1 divided. Unfortunately, you're going to have to lose a mark for this. So how do I make sure when I get my answer, I can just replace x with a number, for example? So if you do x equals 3, 3 minus 1 divided by 3 plus 1 is 2 over 4, which is a half, right? So your answer, you've said to me, is a half. Whereas if you had flipped it, you would have got 2 as an answer. So if this 3 works for this, you've just simplified this. That 3 should work for this. 3 square is 9, minus 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1, divided by 3 square minus 1, 9 minus 1. So 10 minus 6 is 4, 9 minus 1 is 8, and that is just a half. So by using a number, you could have quickly checked if your answer is correct, because a half is a half. Whereas if, I know you might say, oh, but this is taking me some time. So if you get extra time, when people say, oh, I'm done, this is a 1 hour paper, I'm done after 50 minutes, you've got 10 minutes where you can just quickly check your answers. Okay, guys, so hold on. My laptop is going into slow battery, so I'm gonna have to move. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna plug it onto the charger. So caught it just in time. So what was the next question on that? That was question 1. Yeah, so this one, the common mistake is to see right angles everywhere. Yeah, so remember what we said when we had circles or triangles? So a triangle made using a semicircle, or if the diameter is your longer side, that's when you're going to get a 90-degree angle. And that's the only time you're going to get a 90-degree angle. Okay. You need to make sure that for this to be 90, you would have needed that to come right down to here. And that would have made your 90-degree. Unfortunately, that's not what we had. What you've got here is a triangle. But look at that triangle. From the point O to that point here, you've got a radius. But anywhere from O to the circle is the same length as the radius. So if you've got a triangle and both sides are equal, what did we call that triangle again? So that side, isosceles. Because they've got two sides equal, then those two angles are equal. Okay, so if you had started with 90 here, as some people still got 2 marks because they've used their 90, but I've seen teachers marking them much harsher than what I did. Okay, so this angle here is 70. All angles in a triangle add up to 180. So 180 take away 2 times 70, which is 40. So I've got here 40. And then because you've got a straight line, 180 take away 40 is 140. So that was the question here. Find this angle, 140. So even if you had the paper and you wrote 70, 40, and 140, you would still get all the marks. Or you can just do what we did there. Isosceles, PRO is 70. All angles in a triangle add up to 180, so 40. And then ROQ is your last angle. So those were the 3 marks. Find the first angle, second. Okay, so common mistake to avoid is this. You need to make sure that your triangle is made up of the whole diameter before you can say that you've got the 90-degree angle. All right. So remember, these mini prelim are here to help you to kind of make mistakes so that you won't make the mistake again now that you've seen it. Next question. In a human being weighing 150 pounds, yeah, so 75 kilo, which is probably an average person, there are 2.3 10 to the minus 4 pounds of copper. So we made of natural chemical elements. This is very small amount, but yeah, we've got iron in our blood, we've got copper going about our body, we've got a lot of other stuff. So calculate how much copper there would be in 1,200 such people. One person has got 2.3 10 to the minus 4 pounds of copper. How much copper would we get with 1,200 persons? Just 1,200 times 2.3 10 to the minus 4. Just writing that would be your first mark. So you need to now lose the habit. Okay, from now on, lose the habit of seeing a number, thinking if they've given me that number, I need to use that number. Okay, so the best problem solvers are the ones that are looking at a problem, identifying what they need, and using what they need. If you see a number thinking, oh, I've got to use it, you need to think again, okay? Because that's more and more I can see questions come in, and they are testing understanding rather than just, so it's a skill, problem solving is a skill, rather than just giving you a lot of numbers, a lot of things, and then just go and figure out what sums do I need to get the answer. No, to me, that's not good math. What do I need in order to get my answer? So I've seen people writing 0. You can do that if you want, 0.00023, but I don't need that. What did I say your best friends should be? This is a calculator question. Get your calculator out. Type this, 1,200 times 2.3 times 10 to the minus 4 if you want, or use the we multiply 10x at the bottom. Whatever way you want to do it, it takes you 5 seconds to enter it and get your answer straight away. Doing this would lead to errors. I've seen folks even going to the whole bother of doing this time 1,200 and setting that and doing, come on. You've lost 5 minutes of important 1 hour of your time doing something that the calculator would do for you in 2 seconds. Plus the chance of making a mistake. I'm not going to attempt it. Okay. So once you get your 0.276, which quite a few got, now scientific notation. I know you guys had to do that lesson on your own, but we came up, we went through some of these answers. So the scientific notation just means whatever number you're going to give me, it's got to be between 1 point something to 9 point something. Your number has got to be between these. If it's 27.6, you don't get the mark. If it's 0.276, you don't get the final mark. You need now to move that decimal point 1 place to get your 0.2 or 2 point, sorry, then 76. And because it starts with a 0, it's going to be a negative index. And you've just moved it 1 place and it's just -1. Okay. I know it seems quite a lot going through, but we need to get these done in 10 seconds. I know the tough one was probably this one first, but once you get a value, you can still get 1 out of 2. If you had come up with, I don't know, 52.359 and you tell me it's 5.239 or whatever, 10 to the minus to the 1, you would still get a mark because I'm giving the mark for the proper scientific notation. So even if you didn't get the start, you can still get 50%. Now the next one. So how do we do this? To stop people from these should be 3 given point to everyone. So what I tend to do was to do, okay, I'm going to do 2 times this, then 2x times this, then 2x times this, and then 2x times the last one. So that's 3 parameter, and then -3. You can do that if you want. That is perfectly legal, and you miss that step. That's okay. The first mark is given for that. But if you think it's easier for you to write this is 2x time or less, then feel free, write that down. -3 time or less, add your step. Some people find it much easier to now do 2x times 3x squared, which is 2 times 3, 6, x times x squared, x cubed, and so on and so forth. So you get a first mark for this first portion here. A second mark if you get that second portion okay. And then a third mark if you manage to get 6x cubed, and you notice that you've got -14 and -9, -23, plus 27 minus 9. But as long as you get an x cubed value in your final answer, you will get the mark here. So some folks might have made a wee mistake by going -3 times -7 and just put a negative. They might still get the mark here if they do -21 plus 6. So you will still get 2 out of 3. Okay. But these are usually marks that everyone should be getting. Next one. Yeah, most of you guys got that, especially the first two, right? 20c plus 6v equal 121.50. Yeah, I put 0.50 because it forces me to give my final answer with 2 decimals. Sometimes I even pedantic enough to put 105.00, but you don't have to. It's just to remind me, this is numbers. This is money we're talking about. So I'm going to have to give my answer with 2 decimal place. So once you've got the first 2 equations, now you need to show a strategy how you're going to eliminate one of the 2. So it's up to you, whatever strategy you want to use. So the common one is to do 3 times 2 because 3 times 2 gives you 6. So it's an easy one. That means you need to do 63c plus 6v equal 315. So you need to time every single element here by 3. Mistakes seen, people forget to time the 105 by 3. And then you do, I tend to like working with positive numbers. So in my head, instead of doing 3 minus 4, but that's fine. People have done the 3 minus 4. I do 4 minus 3. You can do it in any way you want. I get 43c. And then this is my final answer. And have you noticed I've kept the 0.50? And then you use a calculator. You'd be surprised. People tend to try sometimes to do this, not using the calculator. Again, 3 minutes lost for no reason. 4.50. Then you plug sub 4.50 into, I picked the easier of the 2, right? Because you had a 2v and a 21c, so 2v to me it's easier. I can divide by 2 once I'm done. So 105 minus 94.50 is 10.50. So I can half 10 and half 50 pence, 5.25. So I think the one mistake I saw was when they timed the 21, instead of writing 63, they wrote 61. They forgot the time the 3 by 2 and then 3 by, they forgot to time 3 times 1 and they just put 61. But that's okay because they still managed to get, how many marks was this? 2 out of 3 once they showed that the working was okay. They got different values. Obviously, you won't get the full mark, but you still get 2 out of 3. So that person got 4 out of the full 5. Okay. This, yeah, I would say on those two papers, this was the hardest question. Definitely, number 6. We'll come back to it. Let's do 7 quickly. 7. So I think I've given feedback to people. So 7, the first mark was to open your formula sheet and say, to find x, because I've been asked to give my value to 1 decimal place, I'm going to use the quadratic formula. So even writing this, which is copying from the formula sheet, would give you 25% of the marks. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second mark, I've told you guys, try and break this down into smaller chunks so that you've got less chance to make a mistake. 129, because the first thing you do is your discriminant. Type this in your calculator. If you didn't get 129, I invite you to get your calculator, do 7 square minus 4 multiply by 4, multiply open bracket, the wee -5 close bracket. If you still can't get 129, then you need to come and show me what you type on your calculator. Okay, that would be your second mark. So those two gave you 50% of the mark. Now, how do I get my last 2 marks? Again, how do I type this in my calculator? Use your fractions. You've got 90% less chance to make a mistake. Use the fraction button and start on your calculator. You've got that wee fraction button there. Use it and type -7 plus root 129. Push down with your arrow 8 and equal, and let me know if you get 0.544. Because we were asked to give our answer to 1 decimal place, you round at 0.5, that would be 1 mark. Do the same, -7 minus root 129, divide by 8, a negative minus another number is negative, so the answer's got to be negative. So I think there are still some of you guys who are struggling with typing this. If you are, let me know. If we can have a one-to-one session, I can open a camera and then you can show me exactly what you type, or I can show you step by step on a Casio calculator what you need to type to get these answers. So, common mistake. Someone went, oh, that's -7 plus and minus, oh yeah, root 129, that would do. No, that is a complete different number than this. You're not going to get a mark with this, because if you type this in your calculator, you're not going to get this. So it's not too much asking. Bar, just the same way you've copied it, -7 plus and minus root whatever you got. You don't need to put 7 square minus 4 times 4 times, or someone forgot to put the brackets. No, to make it simpler for you, that is easy to write and then to plug in your calculator. That is a no-go. Okay. So I hope you're not feeling like I'm being harsh, but I'm trying to give you as much. So we'll come back to this one. So I've got 8. Yeah, so how do we do 8? 8, again, a wee problem to solve. So what I've been told is I've got the width of a tunnel is 1 meter. So yeah, you needed to find the width. So the width is this here, 1 meter, but the diameter is 1.2 meter. So if you've got a toddler that is 80 centimeter, so that means I'm trying to find if the toddler who is 0.8 centimeter would fit in here, 0.8 meter. Would 0.8 meter fit here and be able to walk without bending the head or the neck or whatever? That's basically the question I've been asked. How do we do this? Now, this here is the same as this here. This is the center. That means I've got a radius here. Locus or whatever they call it. That is 0.6. The radius, that is 0.6. So I know 0.6. The only thing that I'm missing is this length here. And then you've got here the width. So half the width is 0.5. So I've got a right angle triangle. 0.6 for my hypotenuse and 0.5 for one of the side. And I'm asking you to find out what the value of this is. Pythagoras, guys, right angle triangle. If you're looking for a short side, you do the longest side square minus the other side square, and you take square root of that. So x, which is what we're looking for, I said is square root of 0.6 square minus 0.5 square. Again, do you think I'm gonna here think of 0.5 is 0.2? No. Calculator, plug that in your calculator. What do we get? 0.3316. So I just put dot, dot, dot. I know my height is 0.6 adding to x, which is 0.93. That's me. I've got enough. That is bigger than 0.8. So the last mark is to put the statement here. Yes, the toddler is going to be able to walk through the tunnel. You don't need to put all that standing straight, blah, blah, blah. Because 0.8 is less than 0.93 or 0.93 is bigger. So either way, if you do 0.8 is less than 0.93, you will get the mark as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many marks was this? 5 marks. Pythagoras. So you will get question like this, guys. There is no two ways about it. That comes on 90% of the papers. You need to use Pythagoras within a circle where you've cut a bevel. So sometimes they'll ask you, oh, you've got a water here. What is, if this was like a tube, what's the height of that water? You just need to find that height by using Pythagoras when they've given you, and so on and so forth. Pythagoras, you will need to use that. And Pythagoras is not 4 level. So let's do 9 and 10 quickly. So this is what we've been doing not too long. So first mark is to just solve that. Sin x equal -3/4. So that's your first mark. Now your second question is, if you want to use cast, make sure you put C bottom right. That's why it's called cast. You start bottom right. I know some of you started there CAST, and it's unfortunate, but they're all positive in that first quadrant. So remember all the signal we did, sine, cosine, and tan. We noticed that they were all positive within that first quadrant. So first quadrant is where it says A, is where my positive angle is. And unfortunately, when you're going to solve these, you're going to have to find the first quadrant. There is no two ways about going through this question. If you use cast, you're going to have to find the two positive. Okay? So, first of all, we need to find that angle in the first quadrant by changing the sign of -3/4 by a positive. Once you find it, sign is positive where it says A and S, and it's negative on the other two places. The other two places, one is 180 plus, because that's 180 is a straight line, so you need to go more than 180, or 360 minus the angle. So 180 plus what you got, or 360 minus the angle that you found. And if you want to give them to 1 decimal place, some people give it to 2 decimal place, that's fine. And this is how you would do this. Now, two boxes, they are similar mathematically. We're looking at, I'm going to find a question if it require meter square. Oops, meter square area. If it was cubed, volume. So now calculate the amount of card needed to make the smaller box. So the amount of card is going to be in meter square, which is an area. So first of all, we find the reducing scaling factor, which is 30 divided by 40, which is 3/4. So that would give you a first mark. Then, because we're looking for area, you need to square the linear scaling factor. So 3/4 square. And now your area is just that area scaling factor time the bigger of the two, 2.08, and make sure that you get a smaller value of 2.08, which is 1.17. Okay, so now let's go back to the toughest question. To be honest, I'm calling it the toughest because I'm going to show you where the difficulty was. And I think quite a few got tripped by that. Two things first. We've got a combination of two shapes. I've got a cone and a hemisphere. Cone, hemisphere. Hemisphere is just half a sphere. Volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cube. Half of a sphere is just half of 4/3 of pi r cube. And that gives you 2094.39 centimeter cube. So that was the volume of that hemisphere there. So if I had the paper with me, I would go like this. Then I know this is my hemisphere here at the bottom. Now, what I'm missing is the height of the cone. But they've told me that the total volume is 4293.5. So if the hemisphere is 2094, you need to take away 4293. You need to take away 2094 from 4293 to get the volume of the cone. And that is 2199 centimeter cube. And because you're going to do volume of a cone is 1/3 of pi time r square time the height of the cone, now you're going to equal those two and find the height of the cone it's just going to be 2199 divided by 104, which is 20.99, or you can round it to 21 centimeter. Now the height, some people stop there and mess the mark, because the total height here, h, is not just the cone, but it's the cone plus the radius there. Then that's when you need to add the last 10 here, 21 plus 10, which is 31. Okay. And that's how you would get all your marks, basically. So let me see, I think everyone is here. Any question, guys, on these?
See the problem solving ones, Eugene. That's where I struggled. I don't know about anybody else, but question 6 in particular, that's where I really found it hard to manage quite a lot of the factors in it. I think I just want to try and maybe practice more of those. I think they're big marks.
Yeah, that's, I know.
Around the question.
Yeah, I can't.
Simple asking it.
I'm struggling to visualize it. I have done, and it's, you know.
Yeah, so I noticed some people completely avoided those questions, but like I said, you could get a few marks if you still get a time at the end. So if you think, okay, that's a difficult question, I'll do it at the end. So, you know, feel free to do it. Don't spend 20 minutes on it, but you can always come back to it. So that's usually one thing. But again, it's to highlight what you've been asked. What do you need? Yeah. Those are the things like I would do. Okay. So for those who are not here at the start, so I'm going to stop the recording because I think I started recording from the start.